All right, guys. So the next part, what we're going to go over is all of the, not all of them, but the major image adjustment tools that are relevant that we would, be most likely to use in life. Um, if you go to, under week 4, the files that describe each of these things a little bit are under here, so you can take a look at those. Also, there's a Word document, this one right here, definitions, where I attempt to describe what these things are in a couple sentences. Your best bet when exploring these is to simply turn one on, right? See what it does. Move these levers around a lot just to see what happens. Because honestly, I could talk about what this effect is, but is that really going to give you an idea? No, of course not. Alright, so what to do next? I need to show you guys how to get a proper file to use, right? So this file I have here, I am allowed to use this for educational purposes. So I'm going to show you how to find that. Under Flickr, there's actually a way to search for things. So first I have to search for the thing I want. So I'm going to say forest. And I come up with a bunch of pictures of forest. But if I click on one, it says all rights reserved. All rights reserved means this is copyrighted to that person and it's like there for you to see, but that's it. Now I know some people might argue, oh, well, we're in education, I can use that. Well, my rules for class are that you can't, so too bad. Right here, top left, it says any license. If I click that and instead select all Creative Commons, I now get this. And apparently a lot of people named forest. But if I click on an actual forest picture, it'll say some rights reserved. Now, if you were to click on that, it'll tell, if you see this, you can use it in class because there's no Creative Commons thing that is not applicable to educational purposes. And if I look here, they will all say attribution, meaning you give appropriate credit. So if you make something in class and you're like, I want to put it out there, you have to give credit to someone who took the picture. Non-commercial means we can use it in class and things like that. You're using it to learn, but you can't use it for, that Coca-Cola commercial you're working on. No derivatives is one you can see right here. It says if you make changes to it, don't redistribute the changed one. Meaning you can, I guess, use it for yourself, put it up on your wall, but you can't redistribute it online. So as you click on these, you'll start to learn what these symbols mean off the top of your head. I'm going to go back one though because the picture's too small. And I'm going to scroll down, find the same picture I used in class. Now when you go to download it, you hover or you click on this and you'll see lots of different sizes. 150 by 150 is very small, too small. 5,000 pixels is too big. We don't need it to be that big for what we're doing. So I'm going to grab the 2,000 pixel sized one. Now if I click on this, it will open preview. So I'm going to do this the way you guys have to in your school computers. If you're at home, you can always, right click on a file, open with Photoshop. But our school computers do not have Photoshop listed. So we have to go File, Open, and then I have to figure out where I saved it and what it's called, which is a struggle because I have too many pictures. A preview should come. There it is. Alright, so this one. So I hit open. Now, even though the files we have stored online are JPEGs, are PSDs, all these files are PSDs, and that is a Photoshop document, and we're going to be saving as PSDs. Most photos that you guys get from online or from your camera, from wherever, are going to be JPEGs. That is the standard compression for an image, for a photograph, like for a flat one-layered image. When we save these, because they're changed, it can no longer be a JPEG because it'll have multiple layers. You cannot, say JPEG can only be one flat layer. It's also going to come in as locked like this. So if we double click, I have to be in Photoshop first. If I double click, it brings up this and I say okay, and now it's unlocked and I can do whatever I need to whatever layer. Make sure when you're choosing a file, a couple things. One, you're choosing something that has like a wide range to it, just so you can kind of tinker. That's why we're using photographs. It can be of places, it can be of kitty cats, it can be whatever you want. But we don't want this. This is all orange. It's already been photo corrected. I mean, no one took a picture that looked like that. It's overcorrected in my opinion. But you want something that has a range to it so that you have something to work with. Obviously, this one's not going to be very good, but this one will be fine. So just make sure you're choosing something that has a wide range of colors so you can actually see how these image adjustments work. But I'm going to work between these two pictures because they have different issues and problems that come up. But I'm going to go back to this one. So, alright, I had showed you guys, and I'm going to be doing all adjustment layers. Brightness, contrast, meh. I don't use that very much. If you want to change the overall lightness and darkness of a picture, the way you really want to go is levels. And it's because it considers where the distribution of light and dark is. So 0 over here means no light, 255 means white pixels, and all the other numbers in between are, grayscale. And it's just looking at the lightness or darkness. This does not consider color at all. That's a separate channel. So we can see that there's quite a bit of dark pixels, and then the midtones actually kind of trail off, and then they become lighter, but nothing's that light. And so if I drag this here, I'm going to drag it too far, but you can see what it's doing is it's saying any pixel lighter than this should be considered white, and then it's going to adjust all the middles accordingly. So obviously that's a little extreme, so we're not going to do that. Likewise, if I pull this one, any pixel that's darker than where I am here in the histogram will be considered black, and it's going to adjust all the middle ground. So I can move this a little bit, but the light and darks are actually pretty full, so that I wouldn't move that there. I can, however, move this, and you can see I can lighten or darken the whole image while not losing the fact that there are dark pixels or light pixels. If I move it this way, there's still going to be light pixels. That's the difference between this and, say, brightness contrast. Brightness, if you move that up, the whole thing gets lighter, and you lose all the dark pixels, and no one wants that. These two sliders down here will actually, right now, a white pixel looks white, a black pixel looks black. If I move this, a white pixel will now be not pure white. And you can see, at first when I do that, I actually get back a little bit of information here. And then if I move this in, I'm graying it out. So if you want something to look very washed out, like an old-timey photograph, that might be the way to go. But I'm going to put that back down there. So like I've said, the best way to figure out kind of how these work is to move these things around. Now on this picture, I already know because I've done it before, levels is going to react very differently because it's a completely different assortment of, you can see all this middle ground, not a lot of dark. If I pull this back a little bit, and not a lot of light. So this photograph, despite having these punchy colors, is actually a little bit more washed out than you might think. So let us see. I actually want this to be here. And by the way, one thing you can do too, go back and forth between what you're doing and be like, is this really what I want to do? And the answer is yes, because I want to add the dark pixel. I want a little bit of balance to this picture, and I want to add that back in. And I just double click on the symbol to get that back. And always kind of pull things around more than you think you need to. Like bring it to an extreme at first, and then walk it back if you want. You don't have to. Don't do tiny little steps. Do big steps and then walk it back. All right, so that's levels. Another one that a lot of photo people will use, I don't use this very much, but photographers swear by it, so I'm going to show it to you, is curves. I'm going to turn off that levels thing. And now, first of all, you'll notice it's still a histogram, but you'll notice it changes. When I turn on that levels thing where I mucked with it, you can see the histogram gets redistributed, which in some ways is a good thing because it's not so peaky, but See all these areas where there are no pixels of that size. You can see how if you process things too much, you can start to run into trouble. I'm gonna get rid of this. There we go. So curves is, how do I describe this? This is your histogram, and this curve is how you change, overall lightness, overall darkness. Basically, it's a little bit more sophisticated than levels in terms of like if I it's not linear. So if I make a change here, it gradually fades away, as opposed to I think with levels, if you make a change, it's kind of across the whole thing equally. Um, if I move this down, now you can see it's washing out. Or if I move it over here, it's punching up a little. So it takes a little, no, it takes a little bit of getting used to figure it out. And I may have just accidentally come up with a better solution than my levels one. I'm not sure. But you can see it's not washed out. Yeah, that is a better solution. Accidents happen. But as I pull these left and right, that's the same thing as with this. I think it's the same as these pulling left and right. There we go. But it's there's math involved. You can go to town. You can do crazy stuff like this, but I don't want to. All right, so that's curves, and you can see you can stack these, keep them, turn them on and off as you want them, test them, etc. Let's see. All four of these at the top are just lightness, darkness. There's nothing to do with color. That's what these are. So the few that I have worked with in the past are hue, saturation, and color balance. Black and white, I believe, is the one. Let's see. Yeah. So, if you want to make a color photo black and white, this is how you do it. Because then you can, each of these colors, you can say how much of them are going to be considered. You can kind of change the lightness and darkness of this based on what used to be red or blue or green. We're going to get rid of that though, because I don't need it. So hue saturation I use a lot, but there's a way I use it. So the way this works is, I've shown you guys before this box, right? And the color of the color, the hue, is this bar. And then the saturation is left to right. And then the lightness, darkness is up, down. This is the same thing except it's just 3 different bars. So this is the color of the color. This is, let me bring this back to where it was. This is how saturated, or you can desaturate it. There you go. Looks like a lot of movies now. And then the overall lightness or darkness. I don't much mess with the lightness because it's overall, and like levels, curves, things like that are just better at dealing with it. Saturation is one I'll use a lot. But if you want to change the hue of this, here's the problem. Here we go. So I might want to add a little bit more orange, but obviously that doesn't look right either. So here's my solution. I'm going to take this image layer and I'm going to right click and I'm going to say duplicate. And it says it's a copy. And I'm going to put it underneath the hue saturation. And I'm going to do that trick where you hold down Alt, hover over the middle between them, and click this. So hue saturation is only going to change this top layer. So if I go to it and I say, make more orange. So right now it just looks like I'm changing the whole thing. But here's the trick. I'm going to take this layer and make it a little bit less. There's also different color modes I could use if I really wanted to. Oh, that kind of worked accidentally. I have to change it a little bit because that looked terrible. But is it doing anything? Well, let's see. Haha. So it's basically, it's darkening a little bit and it's more, I think it's kind of warming it up. I could spend all day going through all of these options. Ah, there we go. Overlay is much better, and I could probably turn this back up a little. So the point of this is that originally it's a very green picture, and if I do this, I've warmed up the grass a little bit, and the sky a little bit, actually. I've made this a little greener blue than I would like. So how to fix? Well, this right here is going to show you, right now it's all white, meaning the whole area is getting changed. What I can do is I can use an eraser, make sure it's set to brush, and I'm going to change the opacity down to like very little. And I'm going to make the brush really big, which is going to make it really soft. And I'm going to do this. And as I paint, you can see, if you're looking carefully, that it's getting a little bit less white there. I can even do that a little bit. And what it's going to do is it's going to mean that this hue saturation isn't applying as much to the sky. It still is. And it's because I have the brush turned down to very little. I can do this. And now the sky is going to be affected a lot less than the grass, which is kind of what I want. And I'm using a very soft brush because I don't want to have, if you're looking at it there, you can see that it's like kind of solid brush strokes. I don't want to see a change from like, if I turn it up all the way. You don't want to see that. So we use a very non-opaque brush. There we go. So 11. And when I do that, I can start to control it so I can, get a darker colored field. It's still too dark. I can warm up the field a little bit without messing with the sky too much. So that's another thing you can stack onto things like these adjustment layers. But this is a trick I use a lot where you have multiple layers. I can control them more differently. I can have them overlay instead of normal, which is a completely different look. Maybe normal looks better. I don't know. So this is how you can kind of control things a little bit more. Switching back to this one. The other one I've used sometimes is color balance. So I click that, I hit OK. And this has 3 different separations. So these are 3 different sets of color, like complementary colors. Cyan, magenta, and yellow are your primary colors in real life print. Not coincidentally, red, green, and blue, which are their complements, are your primary colors in light. So all you video people, RGB. So for any of you who grew up thinking that your primary colors were red and yellow and blue, that's not your fault, but your teachers were wrong. So what this is that you can shift. It's very orange in here. So if I turn this down, you can see that the reds kind of go away. The yellows get less yellow. Now the water looks like an ungodly sort of blue. I'm not saying this is the right thing to do. I'm just making these colors look crazy so you can see what's happening. If I take away the magenta, it turns very green or it turns very not green. But you can control... Now it looks stupid purple. You can control certain colors. So if I thought the whole thing looked just a little too overly orange, it's a subtle change. I don't even know if you're going to be able to see it on what I'm, on the YouTube video, but there is a change. And it just kind of takes the orange away a little bit. Now, this is in the midtones. There's also the shadows, which I can make a little less green if I want to, or a little more green. Oh, too much. And honestly, with this one, I definitely just sit there and like pull the levers until I get what I want. But you can tell that the shadows are being affected differently than the midtones. And there's also the highlights. So if I want to fix the fact that it's a little bit orange, I probably have to do that on the highlights too. There we go. All right, and if you're thinking that this picture already looked a little color corrected, you're not wrong. They made the color really, really punchy. Um, and so if I didn't like that for whatever reason, this saturation right here could be brought down. It's a little bit too much, but you could bring the color a little bit more down to earth. um, yeah. So there we go. And if you change the order of these, it will make a difference in how they work. It might be a subtle difference depending on what you're doing, but the order of these matters. Whoa, very washed out. And that's because the color balance and the turning the saturation down will have. Let me put it back to. There you go. So that's the original picture. And all these things that got added are hugely changing what it looks like. Alright, but color balance lets you control very exactly certain colors. The other ones are pretty specific. Posterize is an old-timey thing to do with posters, basically. Having limited color sets. Invert is exactly what you think it is. It inverts the colors. So anytime someone's going into a dream sequence on SNL, they'll use that flicker of back and forth. Let us see. I don't know. I don't really use these too much. There are a few image adjustments if you want to tinker with. Let me go here. That are not available in the adjustment layers. They're permanent. Match color, replace color. I don't use them very much because they're permanent and they're destructive. The last one I will tell you about, because I don't want you to use it on your homework. Don't use it on your homework. Is color lookup. It's the cheap way to get a look. So if I turn these other things off, so this is the original image. And I have the color lookup properties over here. So you can see it's like crisp winter. That looks terrible with this. Here we go. Warms up the image, right? Makes it like super autumny looking. Film stock makes it look like certain, high contrast films that will be set. Day for night, right? So you shoot in the day and you want it to look like night, so it makes it. I don't want you using these for homework, and I'll know if you do because I can see your layers here. It's lazy. I want you guys to understand how these things work, and plus, this terrible day for night look, you've seen it before in cheap movies that had no budget. Because people find these things and they use them quickly and they don't make any changes and blah. So we want to stay away from color lookup. I want you guys to, figure out how to control these things. But I'll go over the homework in the next video.